All right, moving to example 15, and this is in the currency crises section of the reading. I'll make a high-level comment on currency crises and then we will read through this. What is a currency crisis? A currency crisis is where the currency of a given country suddenly falls. People are not anticipating the currency to just dip, but it does. So that creates a crisis. And when the currency falls, it's called a currency crisis. So Monique Kwan now turns her attention to the likelihood of crises in various emerging market currencies. She discusses this matter with a research associate who tells her that the historical record of currency crises shows that most of these episodes are not very well anticipated by investors, the bond market, or major credit rating agencies. Is this true or false? And this is something I cover in the regular lecture. And you can also use common sense over here. If the fall in currency were anticipated, then it would not be a crisis in the first place, right? Because then you would take some actions to manage or you would deal with it. So by definition, when we say that a crisis happens, a crisis is where you do not anticipate. So what is the correct answer here? She is actually correct that most of these entities do not anticipate. Next, Kwan delves further into the historical record of currency crisis or crises. She concludes that even countries with relatively sound economic fundamentals can fall victim to these crisis episodes, and that these attacks can occur when sentiment shifts for reasons unrelated to economic fundamentals. Now this also, if you listen to the regular lecture or you read the curriculum, this is a true statement. And the beauty of these questions is that it emphasizes the most testable aspects of a particular section. All right, the third question here. To better advise the firm's clients on the likelihood of currency crises, Kwan tries to formulate an early warning system for these episodes. She recognizes that a typical currency crisis tends to be triggered by a number of economic problems, not just one. So this is a true statement. The early warning system is least likely to include an impending crisis when there is what? So we are creating an early warning system. We are looking at various indicators. And based on those indicators, we want to predict whether a crisis is coming or not. So here you can use your economic sense, or there is a list that I will show you on the next slide, which you read a few times. An expansionary monetary policy. If a given country has a very expansive monetary policy, might that be something that forebodes potentially a crisis? That is something you would look at. So since we are least likely, this is something that we look at and therefore is not the right answer. An overly appreciated real exchange rate. So our currency is overvalued. Might that indicate that a crisis is looming? Likely, so not the correct answer. Rising foreign exchange reserves at the central bank. This actually is a good thing in a sense. So this is not likely to indicate that you are going to have a crisis. So the best answer is C. And then 4, the early warning system would most likely be better if which of the following happens? A strong record of predicting actual crisis, even if it generates a lot of false signals. So for example, to take an extreme case, if you have a system that keeps predicting that there will be a crisis, so obviously that means that every time there is a crisis, the system will have correctly predicted that. However, more often than that, it would have predicted a crisis, but the crisis did not happen. Right? So is that a good system? Obviously, it is not. Included a wide variety of economic indicators, including those for which data are available only after a significant lag. Actually, you want indicators which tell you now about what will happen in the future. So if you have data that is available with a lag, then you find out after the crisis that, okay, the data said that there will be a crisis. So does that help you? Not really. Okay, started flashing well in advance of an actual currency crisis to give market participants time to adjust or hedge their portfolio before the crisis hits. So this clearly is the best thing to do. And then here is the laundry list from the curriculum that I mentioned. I would encourage you to read this a few times. I mentioned this in the regular lecture also.